She thought she was saving a stranger. She had no idea she was saving a man who could change her life forever. The cold wind howled through the valley as Mia Carter made her way down the narrow mountain path, her basket of herbs strapped tightly to her back. Life in the mountains was tough, but she had learned to survive. As she rounded a bend, a strange sound made her freeze. A groan coming from just beyond the rocky ledge. Mia carefully stepped forward and gasped. A man lay half-conscious at the foot of the slope, his expensive suit torn, his face smeared with dirt. His arm was bent at an odd angle and his breathing was shallow. Without thinking, Mia dropped her basket and rushed to him. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked, gently shaking his shoulder. The man's eyelids fluttered open, revealing piercing gray eyes that held both pain and authority. He tried to speak, but his voice was barely a whisper. "Help." Mia didn't hesitate. She had no idea who he was, but she couldn't leave him here to die. Grabbing his uninjured arm, she pulled him up with surprising strength. "Come on, I've got you." The man winced, but he didn't resist as she helped him stand, draping his arm over her shoulders. Mia didn't know it yet, but the man she was saving wasn't just any lost traveler. He was Ethan Calloway, the billionaire CEO of Calloway Industries. And saving his life was about to change hers. Mia struggled under Ethan's weight as she led him down the rugged trail toward her small wooden cabin. He was tall, muscular, and clearly not used to relying on someone else. He groaned as they stepped inside, his knees nearly buckling. She quickly guided him to a chair near the fireplace. "Sit," she ordered, grabbing a blanket and wrapping it around his shoulders. Ethan let out a shaky breath. His suit was ruined, his hands scratched from the fall, but his sharp eyes were scanning his surroundings. The cabin was modest. Stone fireplace, wooden walls, shelves lined with herbs and homemade remedies. It was a world completely different from his own. Mia knelt beside him, pulling out a jar of salve. "You're lucky I found you," she muttered, gently examining his wounds. "What were you doing up there, alone?" Ethan smirked, though pain flickered in his expression. "That's a long story." Mia arched a brow. "Well, unless you plan on hiking back up that mountain tonight, I'd say we have time." Ethan exhaled, his usual air of control slipping for the first time. "My car broke down a few miles out. I tried taking a shortcut, but clearly that didn't work out." Mia rolled her eyes. "City people always think they can conquer the mountains. Nature doesn't care about money." Ethan's smirk widened slightly. She had no idea who he was. "How long have you been living here?" he asked, wincing as she applied the salve. Mia didn't look up. "My whole life. This is home." Ethan watched her carefully. There was something different about this girl. She wasn't afraid of him, wasn't impressed by his presence, and had no idea that the man she was patching up was one of the wealthiest businessmen in the world. He had spent his life surrounded by luxury, power, and people who wanted something from him. But here, he was just a man who had gotten lost. And for the first time in years, that felt freeing. As the fire crackled beside them, Ethan's eyes flickered toward Mia. He had come to this mountain for answers. He never expected to find her. Mia worked quietly, wrapping Ethan's injured arm with a torn piece of linen. She had no idea she was tending to a billionaire. To her, he was just another lost traveler who needed help. Ethan, on the other hand, was fascinated by her. She moved with effortless skill, her hands steady as she tied the bandage. Her face, though focused, carried a calmness he had never seen before. A life untouched by the pressures of money and power. "Done," she said, leaning back. "It'll hurt for a while, but it's not broken." Ethan flexed his fingers and smirked. "You sure you're not a doctor?" Mia laughed. "Not even close. But when you live in the mountains, you learn how to take care of yourself." Ethan's expression shifted. He had spent his life building an empire. Yet here she was, thriving with nothing but her own skills and determination. A knock on the door suddenly interrupted them. Mia frowned. Who could that be? She stood and opened the door, revealing her neighbor, Mr. Harris. The old man's eyes widened when he saw Ethan sitting by the fire. Mia sighed. Before you ask, yes, I found him on the trail. He was injured. Mr. Harris stared at Ethan like he had seen a ghost. Mia, he said slowly, do you know who this is? She blinked. He said, his name is Ethan. The old man let out a short laugh. Ethan Calloway, he corrected, as in the billionaire, the man whose face is all over the news. Mia froze. She turned back to Ethan, her pulse racing. No, that couldn't be right. But Ethan simply sighed and ran a hand through his hair. The truth was out. Mia's heart pounded as realization sank in. She hadn't just saved a lost traveler. She had saved one of the richest men in the world. And now, her life would never be the same. Mia stared at Ethan, her mind spinning. A billionaire? The man she had dragged down a mountain, bandaged up, and scolded for being reckless was one of the most powerful businessmen in the world? It didn't seem real. Ethan let out a breath. I was going to tell you eventually. Mia crossed her arms. Oh, really? When? Before or after I made you chop wood for your dinner? Ethan chuckled, but there was something else in his gaze. Curiosity. Admiration. Maybe even something deeper. Mr. Harris shook his head in disbelief. Mia, do you realize what this means? A man like him doesn't just show up in places like this. Mia exhaled sharply, looking back at Ethan. Why did you come here? Ethan hesitated, then finally admitted, I was looking for something real. His jaw tightened. I've spent my life around people who only see me for my money. Everything is about deals, profits, and power. But here, he glanced around the simple cabin, then back at her. Here, none of that mattered. Mia frowned. So, what now? You just go back to your world and I go back to mine? Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. That depends. She narrowed her eyes. On what? He took a deep breath, then stood up, still sore, still injured, but standing tall. On whether or not you'll let me change your life, the way you just changed mine. Mia's chest tightened. I don't need charity, Ethan. His gaze softened. And I don't offer it, but I do offer opportunities. She folded her arms. Like what? Ethan smirked. Come with me to the city. Work with me. Show me what life looks like when money isn't the answer to everything. Mia's heart pounded. He was serious. This man, this billionaire, was offering her something more than just wealth. A chance to step into his world. A chance to see if two completely different lives could somehow intertwine. For the first time in years, Mia wasn't sure what to do. But as she looked at Ethan, at the man whose life she had unknowingly saved, one thing was clear. No matter what she chose, her life would never be the same again.